are extremely pleased, as always, to welcome as our speaker today Swami Atmajnanananda, also well known as Stuart Maharaj. He's a very good friend of our center, and he is a senior monk of the Ramakrishna Order and the resident minister at the Vedanta Center of Greater Washington, D.C. since 1997. He earned a BA in philosophy from Northwestern University and his PhD in Indian philosophy from the University of Pennsylvania, and joined the Ramakrishna Order in 1981 at the Vedanta Society of Southern California, and took his first vows of brahmacharya in India in 1992 and sannyasa in 1996. The Swami is a renowned scholar in Indian philosophy and has traveled extensively throughout India and Bangladesh. Stuart Maharaj has contributed various articles and translations to many of the books and magazines of the Ramakrishna Order. He authored Jiva Goswami's Tattva Sandarbha, a study on the philosophical and sectarian development of the Gaudiya Vaishnava movement, published in 1986 under his pre-monastic name of Stuart Elkman. The Swami was a significant critic of Jeffrey Kripal's book, Kali's Child. He is a very popular speaker on Vedanta, particularly here in the States and in India, and you will find many wonderful videos of Swamiji's talks on YouTube. Swami's talk today will be on the Maya of Mahamaya, and he will also take questions during the Q&A after the end of the talk for about 15 minutes or so. So please ready your questions. Welcome back, Swamiji.
Om Devi Yesha Gunamayi Mamamaya Duratyaya Mamevaye Parvadyante Mayametantarantite. Verily, this divine illusion of mine, made up of the three gunas, is difficult to cross over. They alone cross over this illusion who take refuge in me. This is, of course, a very famous verse from Bhagavad Gita, and I thought it would be a little appropriate for the talk this morning. Don't pay any attention to this big introduction that I got. Yeah, a renowned scholar, you can mention my name all day long, no one will know who I am. But anyhow, but I appreciate it. It's very, very nice to hear. So I'll do my best to try to explain a very difficult topic. The topic of Maya is really a fascinating topic, that it's used in so many different contexts and has so many different shades of meaning, from the highest type of cosmic illusion to individual ignorance, and then to nature itself. We see in this verse, Gunamayi, that composed of the three gunas, identified with Prakriti, with nature, all different shades of meaning. And has a cosmic element to it. This is how we explain the creation of the universe, has an individual element, why we have our own individual ignorance. So it's a very difficult but important concept that we have in Vedanta. And I'll try to go through a little bit of it. I've given this talk several times. I always warn people that I can try to explain the different concepts of Maya, but to try to explain Maya is impossible. The phenomenon of Maya defies explanation. This is one of the really defining principles of Maya, that it can't really be understood rationally. It's one of these very strange types of concepts that helps us understand things that we can't understand otherwise, but we can't understand the thing itself that helps us understand other things. So this is Maya. So I'll try to go through some of these different things, from the cosmic side to the individual side, and see if we can make a little sense out of all of this. Yeah, the reason why we can't really claim to understand Maya is that it has a very hazy type of metaphysical existence. It is and it isn't. It can disappear if we try to analyze it. If we don't try to analyze it, then it pops up, it's behind everything, but we can't really grasp it. It's a really type of ephemeral thing. One very nice illustration that's used. Everything okay? Closer? Okay. One very nice illustration that's used is that trying to examine Maya, understand Maya, is trying to examine darkness. If we want to examine the dark, either we do it in the dark, or we try to shine the light on it, and then it disappears. So either way, we can't do it. And shining the light, this means trying to understand it through the mind. That there's something inherently impossible about understanding this concept through the mind itself. All we can do is understand it as a certain explanation for a certain type of phenomenon, and to understand that it has a very hazy type of existence. There's a very nice verse that says, avidyaya avidyatvam idam eva tu lakshanam. Avidya is another name for Maya. What is the lakshana? Lakshana, what is the defining characteristic of avidya? It's avidyatvam. This is a very funny way of putting it. The defining feature of ignorance is ignorance, is that it can't be understood. The defining feature is that it can't be understood. Then it says, yat pramana asahishnutvam. If it could bear the light of any rational way of understanding it, then it says, anyata vastu sabhavit, then it would be something real. Now, so we have these pramanas. We know that pramana, these are different ways that we can prove that something is true. There are three main pramanas in Vedanta. Actually, Vedanta will have six, but three main ones. One is pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means, how do we know something? We see it. So, pratyaksha. Then we have anumana. If we don't see it, we can draw some inference from something that we see. And then shabda, some authoritative person will tell us. So, if it's raining outside, somebody says, how do you know it's raining outside? I saw it was raining. And then somebody else says, well, I didn't see it was raining, but you just walked in and you're soaking wet. So there's no other way to explain it. It must be raining outside. And then the third person says, somebody authoritative person told me that it's raining outside. So we have different ways of understanding these things. So this Maya, it doesn't stand up to any of these, and yet we experience it. So I'll give another illustration. Suppose we think we hear something outside. We get very nervous. We think there may be a thief. So we go outside and we look around. We don't see anybody. Pratyaksha. Then we look for footprints. If we see some footprints, we can draw some inference that somebody was there who shouldn't have been there. We don't see any of that. Then we see our neighbor. Neighbor's been looking the whole time. We say, did you see anybody? They say no. So then we understand that a thief didn't really come, but we still have a little bit of that fear and nervousness. And just like with the snake and the rope, we may see that there's really no snake at all, there's only a rope, but still that fear is there, and something causes it. What causes us to think that there's a snake when there's only a rope there? What causes us to do that? Well, the ignorance of the fact that there's a rope. We can maybe explain it that way. Otherwise, we don't have any really good. It looks like it. It's a little dark outside. We can't see very clearly. But otherwise, we attribute it to this idea of, well, we simply misunderstood. We didn't see it for what it really was. So this is one way that we understand this Maya. So it's a way of understanding a certain type of phenomenon that we can't otherwise explain. Basically, we're talking about this whole universe. How did this universe come into existence? Can anyone explain that? If we say that Brahman alone exists, then how do we explain variety? If there's only oneness, how do we explain variety? How do we explain all of these things? We say, well, because of Maya. On account of Maya, the one can become the many. On account of Maya, the individual misidentifies and feels that he's a jiva instead of one with the Brahman. On account of Maya. So we're using a term to explain something which we can't otherwise explain, and that thing that we're using to explain it we don't really understand. So this is this concept of Maya that we may say that, well, then why even bother with it? It serves a purpose. And we can't explain things at all without some type of understanding of this Maya. But we have to realize that the rational mind can grasp these things. Sri Ramakrishna says it's like taking a pot that can only hold, say, one gallon of water, and we're trying to pour 5 gallons of water in it. The mind, because the mind is bound within Maya. The mind is within Maya, so it can't step out of it to understand it. Now, I used to think that, so what if we increase the capacity of the mind so it can hold 5 gallons of water? Huh? It's not like that. There's something inherently impossible. It's not that we're not intelligent enough or that we can increase the ability of the mind to understand. Something inherently impossible. Something like trying to increase our speed so that we can run away from our own shadow. Huh? Something inherently impossible. Or suppose somebody says, can you see the back of your head? And we say, well, if I could spin around fast enough, perhaps I could do it. Yeah. But there's something that just a priori, inherently impossible about rationally understanding through the mind, which means time, space, causation, all of those things, to rationally understand this concept of Maya. So why do we try? There's something inherent in the human mind that we don't like to admit that there's not an answer to a question. If something happens, there has to be a cause for it. We know that. Nothing will happen without a sufficient cause. And we want to know that. If somebody says, no, don't ask that question, we say, why can't I answer that question? So we have this very natural desire to try to understand things like that. But let's go back to this issue of this universe itself. We all know from our very childhood, we've heard about the chicken and the egg. Huh? So which came first, the chicken or the egg? We're little children, and there's a riddle for us. And we understand at a very young age that there's not a really good answer for that. So we have 3 options. Huh? That somehow we have a chicken without an egg. It just started that way. And somehow we have an egg that wasn't laid by a chicken. Huh? Or we say there always was a chicken and an egg. Huh? Now, each one is a bad answer. How do we explain the chicken without an egg? How do we explain the egg without a chicken? And the other is what we call in logic this fallacy of infinite regress. That we can have endless series that doesn't have a beginning to it. If we say there was always a chicken before the egg, always an egg before the chicken, and just think that we can go back infinitely back in time, that this is a fallacious way of trying to understand things. If we, from a mathematical point of view, we can have an endless series, n plus 1. Huh? You keep adding, but it had to begin someplace. Swami gives a nice illustration that suppose we look out the window and we see a tree branch. Now, we know that on one end, there's no limit, theoretically, no limit to how far it can grow. It can keep growing and growing and growing and growing. But the other end, it has to be attached to a tree. Huh? There has to be some starting point for all of this. So we're stuck now with 3 bad answers. And the mind doesn't like to accept that one of them has to have been the right answer. Huh? How do we accept the fact that we can't explain for the origin of this physical or visible universe? Even if it's a dream, how do we explain that? So this is our dilemma. So we come up with this idea that we have an explanation, Maya. Huh? But what kind of explanation? This is the other type of question that we can ask ourselves. So there's a very natural longing for understanding of things. You know these murder mysteries. This is Agatha Christie. She wrote all these murder mysteries. There was one, Murder on the Orient Express. I don't remember all the details of it, but some murder takes place on the train, right? And there are a number of, maybe 6 different people who had some motive for the murder. And so they all get together, they try to figure out who was the one who did it, but they all have an alibi, ironclad alibi. Now, can we accept that? That it's impossible that any one of the ones did? No, because it happened. The murder actually happened. How do we accept the fact that we can't pin it on somebody? Huh? So if it's a novel, then we can say, well, this is a plot flaw. Huh? That the author didn't think to give one an alibi that's a bad alibi, and that person had to do it. But we don't accept that with the universe, because we think this is something real, something that actually happened. It's a real murder on the train. Somebody had to have done it. It doesn't just happen on its own. But this is the condition that we have now. This universe had to be created somehow, or has to have some sufficient cause, but we can't really come to any good conclusion how it happened. Did it happen in time? Has it always? We have this idea, these cycles. We talk about this universe has been going through these different cycles from beginningless time. Now stop and think, what does that mean? We use terms, we don't know what they mean. From beginningless time, I sometimes laugh. What is it? From time immemorial. We use terms like that. It's always been going on. But this is that infinite regress, fallacy of infinite regress. So we don't really know. We understand that if we see a chain, we understand there's a link before and a link after. We think there'll always be one before and always one after. But then how do we account for anything? So this is our dilemma. This is the dilemma that we have. And with regard to this universe, then we really don't have a very good answer about any of this. We can be like the Ajatavadins. You know about this Ajatavada. This was Gaudapada. This was Shankaracharya's Paramaguru, the guru's guru. And he said, well, then we can say that it's not real. How can it be real if we can't account for its existence? So we say it's unreal. There's something like a dream. If there's a dream, we can have a dream where there's a murder without a murderer. Nothing has to be very logical in a dream that way. But the same dilemma is there. How do we account for the dream itself? Then the same problem. Dreamer and dream. What makes the dreamer have a dream? Maya. So we're just stuck with all of that. So this is one way that we use technical terms to help us understand things that we don't understand. And I'll give you a few different examples. Say with children. Suppose a child comes home and says that, I understand that when we take water, that it can get colder and colder and colder, but why, when it hits 32 degrees Fahrenheit, does it turn into ice? And what's the answer that we give? That's the freezing point of water. That's the answer. Because that's the freezing point of water, it turns into ice. So then, okay. So then the child says, how is it that a caterpillar can turn into a butterfly? The parent says it's very easy, the process of metamorphosis. Okay, so now we think, okay, now I have a term for it, I think I understand it. But what does it tell us? It doesn't tell us anything at all. Or we take something like, somebody says, how is it that a plant can actually get some type of nourishment from the light of the sun? How does that actually work? Easy, photosynthesis. Yeah? Now, the scientists can explain a little better how things actually happen, but they also reach a point where they just put a little term to it because we can't explain everything. We can't explain everything, but it makes us feel better. We put a term to it. It's a little bit of what we do with this idea of Maya. So we've given a technical term to cover the fact that we don't really understand. And then we tell ourselves it's okay that we don't understand because this inability to be understood is the quality and characteristic of Maya itself. So this is our situation. It brings a little feeling of humility, that we start to understand how little we understand of this universe, how limited his mind is with regard to understanding these big types of questions. There was a very famous German philosopher, Immanuel Kant, and he wrote a very big book called The Critique of Pure Reason. Very boring book. We had to read it in college. But he did a very interesting thing. He took all of these questions, does the universe have a beginning in time? Does it not have a... And he would take the arguments and he would prove the falsity of each of the possible options. Yeah. And he came to the conclusion that this is the limit. The mind doesn't go beyond this. The mind hits this brick wall where it can't go beyond this because it's stuck within the limitations of time, space, and causation, trying to understand things that go beyond that. So this is why Sri Ramakrishna didn't dwell on these questions. He'll say, who can understand the nature of God? He'll very often give that type of explanation. How many times he told M, or bichar korona, don't try to figure these things out rationally. Promise me, he said, promise me that you won't keep trying to understand these things through the mind. Now, the vichara has a very important role to play. Vichara means to analyze things. And sometimes Thakur would say, Sri Ramakrishna would say, one should constantly practice this vichara. Now, that means constantly ask ourselves, what is important in life? What is not important? What is permanent? What can give us some joy and peace in life? What is temporary? That type of vichara. But this other thing, we're just trying to use the whatever little intelligence we have to understand these big questions, is a dead end. We find that we've reached this wall and we bang our heads against it and we can't do anything about it. There is another very important verse, which is, let me see if I can find it. Okay. This says, Achintya khulu ye bhava datangs tarkena yojayet prakritibhya param yachat tad achintyasya lakshanam. Achintya means something which can't be understood through the mind. It's something inconceivable. If something is like that, then natangs tarkena yojayet. Don't try to apply logic to things which are beyond our ability to comprehend. A very, very famous verse. The second half is not so famous, but very, very famous verse. And it's quoted very often by Swami Bhuteshanandaji Maharaj. And very important in the Vaishnava tradition. You mentioned that I did that study, that Vaishnava study. That's actually the name of the school of Vedanta, Achintya Bheda Bhedavada. That this whole world is a paradox. That yes, there's oneness and there's distinction. These both are there, and it's achintya. It can't be logically understood, so don't try to use logic for something that goes beyond the scope of reasoning. It's a very important thing, because we don't like to admit that we can't understand these things. So many times people ask these questions, then why did create the universe? Why is it like that? We don't have answers for all of these things. It's a hard thing to admit. There are questions without answers. But the answer we give is Maya. So we may like it, we may not, but anyhow. Okay, where was I? So why do we have this concept of Maya? What role does it play in the different schools of Vedanta? Why is it so necessary? Why does it play such a prominent role? In Dvaita Vedanta, we start out with a few basic principles. One is that Brahman alone is this really sole reality, Brahma Satyam. And Jagat Mithya, that this world is somehow not up to that same standard of reality, however we understand it. Now, this Brahma and Brahman in Dvaita Vedanta is very restricted. It can't do very much. It's not allowed to think anything. It's not allowed to really create anything. It's niriha, actionless. nirguna. It has no qualities, no characteristics. So how does it do anything? How do we explain, even if we say this universe is mithya, what does that mean? How can I say that, just dismiss this as, well, it's just unreal? We experience it. We live in this universe. This is more real to us than anything else. How do we say it's unreal? Well, we can say that it can disappear in the state of samadhi. Okay, that's all right. Or we can say it's transitory. We have all these ways of understanding this in unreal. But the fact is that even this unreal universe, how do we explain it if we start out with just this nirguna Brahman? With no Shakti even. See, Thakur will always bring in the Shakti idea, but without that, so we need something. So they bring in this idea of Maya. Now, Brahman is not allowed to have a second category. Advaita. It has to be one. So where does this Maya exist? Is it outside of Brahman? It's not allowed. Huh? Is it within Brahman? That means there's ignorance within Brahman, which is pure knowledge. It's not really allowed. Huh? So sort of inside, like the venom inside of the snake, which doesn't affect the snake. Huh? A little bit like that. But when we analyze everything and we see this Maya disappears because it's ignorant, this Maya disappears, then we don't have to ask the question, where did it come from? A little bit of a clever answer. A little bit of a clever answer. But we can understand the need for this type of answer. And it maintains the very pure concept of the Brahman. It doesn't make us rely on any personality or anything like that. Now, the dualists, they also have a bit of a problem that how to explain, suppose Brahman, the personal God, that this is Brahman, what desire to create a universe? Brahman is purnakama. All desires have been fulfilled. What possible reason would there be? So as a little Maya has to come over Brahman itself. A little desire to create this universe. We read in Taittiriya Upanishad, Brahman is sitting there looking around getting bored. Finds himself he's all alone, no one to play with, nothing like that. So he says, Bahusya, may I become many. Huh? Why? How does that thought come into his mind? Maya, thank you. Yeah. So this is the problem that we have with regard to how do we explain the existence of this universe. Now, this Maya, it has this secondary meaning, which sometimes we use the term of vidya, that we fall under this veil of Maya ourselves. Now, we can explain this in terms of it's a distinction between truth and fact. This is my own designation. You can see if it's helpful enough. That we have certain things that are true and certain things that we accept as fact. So we accept, in Advaita Vedanta, we accept this ultimate truth that Brahman is the sole reality, that Brahman alone is real. And the fact is that we have no idea what this Brahman is. Huh? And this universe is unreal, is a mithya somehow. This is the truth, one of the axioms of Vedanta. The fact is that we take it as real. Then we have this other truth that individual and the Jivatman and Paramatman are one and the same. But we feel we're all individual, separate individuals, right? So that's the fact. So the truth and the fact, they butt heads. And this fact of life that our ordinary experience is the exact opposite of what we take to be the truth, is explained as Maya. Now, Swamiji likes this type of explanation. He has a beautiful lecture where he talks about Maya, and he'll give different scenarios, and he says, this is the fact of life, the fact of our existence is Maya, and this is Maya. He'll talk about it in those terms. So we have these different facts, that we live in a world of multiplicity, and yet we say that there's only oneness. There's only oneness, somehow appearing to be many. Now, what causes the one to appear to be many, and at the same time the one doesn't change? Maya. So we may not like it. We may think that it's coming up with a false type of explanation, but it's admitting the fact that there has to be something in order to allow the one to even appear as the many, not become the many, not undergo change, but, or maybe the Shakti will undergo change, but at least to appear to be many, we have to have something, some way to explain it. Now, it's very hard to explain it without bringing in the concept of Shakti. So rather than, and now we go a little bit from the Advaitic position, rather than just say there's some type of cosmic ignorance. Why should there be cosmic ignorance? We say that there's something inherent in Brahman, that power to create, this Chit Shakti, the power to project this universe out of itself, to enter into that universe, to uphold the universe, and withdraw this universe. So now what we're saying is that Brahman is not simply Nirguna, but Saguna also. Sri Ramakrishna emphasized this point over and over and over again, that the same ultimate reality, from one point of view, is Nirguna Brahman, actionless, pure consciousness, and from the other point of view, the source of everything. This Saguna doesn't mean that God is nice and sweet and kind and compassionate. We can take that way for the personal God, but in the Upanishads, even without this personal side, it means that it has this capacity to create, to project, to enter into everything. And this is also one understanding of Maya. Now we're understanding Maya as a type of power, a certain type of Shakti. A little easier for us to understand. The Advaitic position is it has a certain beauty and pristine philosophical value to it, but this is a little easier to grasp, this idea. And we have to remember that all of these are ideas. They're all, it's not that one is true and the other is not true. Thakur emphasized this point over and over and over again, that you won't find truth in any doctrine. You won't find truth in Advaita Vedanta, Vishishta Advaita, anything. These are paths to reach the truth. When we have that realization, it goes far beyond all of these. These are different doctrines that we can utilize. If they appeal to us, it'll help us get to the roof. They're not the roof itself. Yeah? So Thakur is very clear on that. We have to always remind ourselves that these are human ways of trying to understand things that can be helpful to us, give us some conviction, some guidelines, some particular ladder that we use to climb to get to the roof. So we find, anyhow, to get back to this, that Maya is somehow the way that we can understand or blame everything for the human condition. It's a very big topic in existential literature, the human condition, that we're born into ignorance somehow. It's a very odd thing that we don't know where we came from, where we're going. If we really think about it, how mysterious all of this is. Why is there anything at all? And how to account for anything? We can account for things, individual things. Oh, karma, samskar, and everything, but the whole setup. Why? How do we account for any of it? So we just have to accept this. This is why Swami says this is fact. The fact of existence is this Maya and this human condition where we're covered with avidya, we're covered with ignorance, and that means we falsely identify with everything external to us, and our understanding of who we are is the exact opposite of our real nature. It happens from childhood, that this small infant has everything is external and can't distinguish anything, even only sees colors and shapes and forms, and then knows the mother and everything. By the time they're old enough to understand things, already it's forged this identification with the body and the mind and everything. Then it's almost too late. Now we have to try to reverse all of that and understand ourselves as awareness, as the witness of everything. So we see that this concept of Maya historically starts to change from this type of, actually at the very beginning, I think the earliest understanding of Maya is the best, magic. That Indra through his Maya. That we read that. And just, how do we explain magic? Magic is magic. If we could explain it, it's not magic, it's a natural phenomenon. How do we explain a miracle? We may say, well, miracles, they're all things we simply don't understand, but if it's a real miracle, it's a miracle. If real magic, it's magic. So we start out with that. Then we get this highly philosophical idea of some type of cosmic ignorance and illusion and everything. But then this idea of Shakti starts to come. I want to read a very nice quote from Swami Vivekananda. This was a lecture that he gave on Maya and illusion. He's going to refer to one of the later Upanishads. This is Shvetashvatara Upanishad. It's a very curious fact that we go through the Upanishads, we don't find the word Maya. We think it's such a standard and important concept. It's not there in the Upanishads till we get to this Shvetashvatara Upanishad, much later Upanishad. So he says, this is Swamiji's lecture on Maya and illusion. Much later on, in one of the latest Upanishads, we find the word Maya reappearing, but this time a transformation has taken place in it and a mass of new meaning has attached itself to the word. Theories have been propounded and repeated. Others had been taken up until at last the idea of Maya became fixed. We read in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, know nature to be Maya. So now we've gone from just as Maya to Shakti to Prakriti itself. No, and this is a Gunamaya, we read the first verse, composed of the three gunas. Know nature to be Maya, and the ruler of this Maya is the Lord himself. So now we get to this teaching which we can almost say is the philosophical position of Sri Ramakrishna. I don't like to say that because he liked all of the philosophies. Very often he'll speak in terms of qualified non-dualism, getting the full weight of the bell fruit and all of that. He liked all of them. He liked the dualistic position also. And call on your mother with tears in your eyes. He liked all of them. But when he speaks in a philosophical vein, he seems to like this idea of Shakti and this idea of the Divine Mother. Because when we add the Shakti to the Brahman itself, Brahman and Shakti together, then we get this idea of motherhood. Because the universe proceeds, like the child that proceeds out of the mother, that will proceed out of the Divine Mother, this whole universe. So Sri Ramakrishna, on some level, he likes what we call the Shakta position. That we simply accept the fact that the Brahman has a power. See, the Advaitins are a little embarrassed. They don't want to say, no, the Brahman is nirguna. But there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's a power to create the universe. That's the Divine Mother. This is our concept of God. What is the concept of God if there's no power of creation there? So Sri Ramakrishna, he'll equate this nirguna Brahman and the Saguna Brahman and say it's impossible for us to understand Brahman only from the nirguna point of view. We start with pure consciousness and we're stuck. What we've done, we've painted Brahman into a corner. No way to get out without getting paint on his feet. We haven't given him a chance to do anything. So this Shakti idea becomes a very prominent type of idea. Now let me give a few examples of how we can have nirguna and saguna together at the same time. We very often hear of Brahman being like the sun. The light of the sun illumines everything. Now, the light of the sun, does it have any color to it? No. Light is invisible. Light is invisible. Because light is invisible, we can see everything. If light had a color to it, it would tinge everything. We wouldn't know the real color of anything. If we take a light bulb, clear light bulb, and we put red around it, everything will look red. So light itself has no, light itself is invisible. Even Sri Ramakrishna says that. He had that, at least enough of that scientific understanding. It's invisible, and because it's invisible, we can see everything. There's the same idea with the Brahman. when we have this illustration of a vat of liquid, and you put your cloth in, and it can come out any possible color, what will be the color of that vat of liquid? It has to be colorless. Huh? If it's any one color, every cloth will come out that color. Huh? So the Brahman, it'll be colorless. Now, if we say that the light of the sun is colorless, then we're not getting the full picture, because that light contains every color of the spectrum of the rainbow. When it goes through a prism, that invisible light turns out to be all of the possible colors when it goes through this prism of Maya. So if we don't understand and accept that power that invisible light has to manifest itself as all light, then we're not getting the full weight. Then if we don't understand that the sun has the power to give warmth, if the sun has the power to nourish, that plant life, human life doesn't exist without this other power of the sun, then we're not getting the full picture. And when the light of the sun goes through the prism, it turns into all possible colors. The sun is unaffected and unchanged, and still that light is colorless. So nirguna, saguna, Brahman, one and the same. And that power, Sri Ramakrishna says, is not always manifest. When it's not manifest, he says, I call it Brahman. When that power is manifest, I call it Kali, or Divine Mother. Many times he said to Narendra, or Swami Vivekananda, because Narendra, he didn't like this idea of Kali in the beginning. Later he loved it. In the beginning, he thought, who is this Thakur Kali, this goddess with the sword and holding this cut-off head and all the gruesome things and everything? And he would say, no, what you call the Brahman, I call Kali. That is nothing but that same Brahman, together with Shakti. And that Shakti is sometimes manifest, sometimes unmanifest. The ocean can break out into waves, same ocean, or there can be no waves, same ocean. But the nirguna aspect is always present. Always present. Let me give another type of example. If we take somebody who is sleeping, someone is a sleeper. Now, when a dream takes place, that sleeper becomes a dreamer. So now we have a dream. If there's a dream, there's a dreamer. So the same, they're not two different people. I'm sleeping and I'm dreaming. When I'm dreaming, that's the Saguna and Brahman aspect. Now, I don't have to be dreaming. The sleeping part will always be there. When I turn into a dreamer, I'm still a sleeper. Or another example that Swami Swananji used to use all of the time. This is with regard to a woman who gives birth to a child. That as soon as she gives birth to a child, she becomes a mother. Is she no longer a woman? The woman aspect is always there. Always there. The motherhood aspect is always there as a potential. But when the child is there, then she's both. So this nirguna aspect, we can understand the Advaitic position. That this is the unchanging, permanent, absolute aspect of Brahman, and the other is temporal, somehow within this realm of time and everything, because sometimes manifest, sometimes unmanifest. So we end up with this idea of Shakti connected with Maya, and then it gets attributed to us, because even the Advaitins, when they try to explain Maya, they do it in terms of Shakti, two types of Shakti. There's Avarana Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti. Avarana Shakti, from the individual point of view, is that our real nature gets covered over somehow. We don't know who we are. We don't know that eternal self, that unchanging consciousness. That's something that is always behind us, disappears, that we can't really run around and catch hold of. And then this Vikshepa Shakti means we falsely superimpose all of these external things so that we identify ourselves with this physical body, with our personality, with our culture, with our religion, with our heritage, all sorts of things that we begin to identify with. This is also due to Maya. But this type of Maya we can understand very clearly. From the individual point of view, we can understand very clearly how we fail to see our own real nature because we falsely identify with the external things. So from this point of view, this idea is very, very helpful. And this is why Sri Ramakrishna will say that this ego itself is Maya. Because the ego means what? Falsely identifying with these external things, with their personality and with our character and with all of our qualities, abilities, characteristics, and everything. So this is that ego, and this is also Maya, because it keeps us bound to the world. It keeps us restricted. It makes us feel separate from everybody else. This is the egocentric type of way of looking at things. Now, what Sri Ramakrishna says is that this ego is not real, but it gives the appearance of reality, and we have to deal with it. He was very practical. So he would give the illustration, the ego is like a stick on the surface of water. If we look at it from above, it looks like it's separating one side from the other side. If we look at it from an aerial point of view, we may even think that it goes all the way down and separating one side. If you go to a public swimming pool, and they'll put a little rope across for the shallow section and the deep section. Kids have to stay on one side. But it's one swim, it doesn't separate the water. It gives the appearance of separating it. And that appearance is Maya, that's the ego, and that makes us feel separate from everybody else and separate from God. And it's not real, but we can't get rid of it. There's another part of Maya. He says you can analyze 1,000 times and come to the conclusion that it's not real. But then second, somebody looks at you funny. The ego comes up. How dare you look at me that way? So what do we do with it? And this is where Sri Ramakrishna is very, very practical. He says then, let this rascal, the ego, remain as the servant of God. So we try to utilize this product of Maya to help us transcend Maya. And now, this is exactly what Thakur means when he says we get a thorn in our foot and we want to remove it. We find another thorn and we use that thorn to remove it and then throw that one away. So we use this sattvic ego, this higher type of ego, to transcend and eliminate this other type of false identification. Now, one other interesting thing, goes back to this idea of Maya, is that if we don't accept this universe as something false, it's a very hard idea. Somebody will say, the universe is like a dream. What does it mean? Not literally like a dream. What does it mean? It has a dream-like quality. We all can say, yes, it has a dream-like quality. Now, this mithya, this word mithya, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, he doesn't like this word mithya. Almost always, he'll say anitya instead of mithya. If he says mithya, he's quoting the Advaitins. But when he says Brahman alone is real, in the English version, there's one translation I don't like. English version, very often you'll read Thakur saying, Brahman alone is real, the world is unreal. The word he's using is anitya, transitory, not permanent. We can all accept that this world is constantly changing. So he liked this idea that this was part of that Maya, that this world is very hard to grab hold of. Everything is in a state of flux. Buddhists like this idea also. Everything in a state of flux, anitya. Now, what does anitya mean? We can say that everything in this universe one day will disappear. It'll turn into dust and ashes. Buildings will crumble. Nothing will last. Nothing is permanent that way. I don't think it means that. Just try to imagine if everything that exists now were permanent. These chairs, the floor, everything, that this will remain exactly the way it is, at least through our whole lifetime. the transitory nature of the world is us. That every moment is going down this rabbit hole of time. It's not external things. We're the ones who are transitory. Even if everything is permanent here, our life is flying by day after day after day after day. Time is swallowing up everything. This time itself is Maya. So Sri Ramakrishna likes this type of understanding. When he says anitya, it doesn't simply mean that everything is changing. We know that. But it's our own understanding of things. That how this play of time, we look back on our lives, where did it go? Whole lifetime goes just like that. I often ask myself, say, we reach these milestones. We become 50 years old, 70 years old, 70. We ask ourselves, how long did it take? How long did it take to turn 75 years old? Yeah. There's no way to judge these. Once it's over, it's over. Yeah. So I often think we do everything to extend our life. But when the final day comes, how much difference does it make? Whether it's 75 years, 85 years, 95 years, then everything gets consigned to this filing cabinet of memory. Anyhow, everything just gets pushed back that way. Swamiji liked this idea. I'm going to read the beautiful story that he tells about Narada. Most of you know this, but this is a very nice thing. A legend tells how once Narada said to Krishna, "Lord, show me Maya." A few days passed away, and Krishna asked Narada to make a trip with him toward a desert. And after walking for several miles, Krishna said, "Narada, I am thirsty. Can you fetch some water for me?" "I will go at once, sir, and get you the water." So Narada went. At a little distance there was a village. He entered the village in search of water and knocked at a door, which was opened by a most beautiful young girl, also Maya. See, another meaning of Maya is we get some attachment. Maya means attachment. It means we get charmed by something and we lose our ability to think clearly. So, at the sight of her, he immediately forgot that his master was waiting for water, perhaps dying for the want of it. He forgot everything and began to talk with the girl. All that day, he did not return to his master. The next day, he was again at the house, talking to the girl. That talk ripened into love. He asked the father for the daughter, and they were married and lived there and had children. Thus, 12 years passed. His father-in-law died. He inherited his property. He lived, as he seemed to think, a very happy life with his wife and children, his fields and his cattle and so forth. Then came a flood. One night the river rose until it overflowed its banks and flooded the whole village. Houses fell. Men and animals were swept away and drowned, and everything was floating in the rush of the stream. Narada had to escape. With one hand he held his wife, and with the other two of his children. Another child was on his shoulders, and he was trying to ford this tremendous flood. After a few steps, he found the current was too strong, and the child on his shoulders fell and was borne away. A cry of despair came from Narada. In trying to save that child, he lost his grasp upon one of the others, and it was also lost. At last, his wife, whom he clasped with all his might, was torn away by the current, and he was thrown on the bank, weeping and wailing in bitter lamentation. Behind him there came a gentle voice, "My child, where is the water? You went to fetch a pitcher of water, and I'm waiting for you. You have been gone for quite half an hour." "Half an hour?" Narada exclaimed. 12 whole years had passed through his mind, and all these scenes had happened in half an hour, and this is Maya. So this nature of time and transitory nature of life, how everything is just flowing by, and we really can't gauge things. This is also part of this idea of Maya. So this is everybody's story. This is life. Of course, it's not so bad. We can have our enjoyment and everything, but it's meant to show us that we are something more than this transitory nature. That we have to realize that permanent, infinite an eternal aspect of ourselves, which is the witness of everything, that there's someone who's watching my higher self throughout all of this, that divine presence within, and which transcends Maya. So this is the way Swamiji goes on, that he talks about all of these different facts of life, this idea of time and ego and everything, and he says, and this is Maya. And it affects everyone, even the avatar. Sri Ramakrishna, so many times he said that even Rama wept for Sita. He tells the story of Vishnu when there's Varaha incarnation. After he's finished with his job there, and then he's happy with all of the little baby pigs wallowing in the mud and everything, and he doesn't want to come back. There's Maya. He doesn't want to come back. Finally, they get together, and Shiva says, "Leave it to me," and he goes and he takes his trident and kills the pig body, and Vishnu, laughing, goes back to heaven. But even that Maya came for the avatar, just to show how strong this Maya is, and this desire for enjoyment and desire to forget, to not even try to know our real nature, but just to try to somehow enjoy this world like that. So what do we do with this idea of this ego? I mentioned before, Thakur says, let it remain as the servant of God. We have different ways of understanding how we utilize this ego. The Jnani has one way. The Jnani will make this ego huge, one with the whole universe, and can smash out of this net of Maya. And the Bhakta, he'll become very small and tiny and go through this net of Maya. We have these two examples of Nag Mahashai, Thakur's wonderful householder disciple, so humble that this net of Maya couldn't hold him. And Swamiji so huge that he could just break through it. He used to say, Nirgachati Jagadalat Pinjaradi Vakeshari, that breaks through this cage, this bamboo cage of Maya, like the lion breaking out of his cage. So we have the different ways of doing it, but there's a third way also, and that we admit defeat to Maya. We say, Mother, I don't know. I can't understand anything. I'm your small child. I'll do as you want me to do. This is that Sharanagati. This is that type of surrender that we propitiate the Divine Mother. Remember the verse in the beginning, that who can transcend this Maya? Those who take refuge in me. Sri Krishna is saying that means in the Divine Mother. Take refuge in the Divine Mother, and she'll look after us, take care of us, like the mother kitten and the baby kitten. We read in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the Jnani, follower of the path of knowledge, rejects Maya. The Bhakta devotee, however, does not ignore Maya. He worships Mahamaya. Taking refuge in her, he says, O Mother, please stand aside from my path. Only if you step out of the way shall I have the knowledge of Brahman. The Jnani explains away all three states, waking, dream, and deep sleep. But the Bhaktas accept them all. As long as there is the ego, everything else exists. See, we can't say that everything is dreamlike, everything is false, when we have such identification with our own physical body and everything else. As long as there's the ego, everything else exists. So long as the I exists, the Bhakta sees that it is God who has become Maya, the universe, the living beings, and the 24 cosmic principles. Then later he says, one must propitiate the Divine Mother, the primal energy, in order to obtain God's grace. God himself is Mahamaya, who deludes the world with her delusion and conjures up the magic of creation, preservation, and destruction. She has spread this veil of ignorance before our eyes. We can go into the inner chamber only when she lets us pass through the door. Now, what happens when we transcend Maya? Does this universe disappear? It may just, when the mind goes to the very high level. We read in Vivek Chudamani and other texts, where is this universe? Everything is disappearing before. But we come back again, we're back in the same universe, but everything is changed. Everything changes for us. So the Bhakta, devotee, will see everything as the glory of the Divine Mother. It's Aishwarya. Everything is a manifestation of glory. See His Mother everywhere. Everything is Chinmaya. Everything is embodiment of consciousness, and within everyone is nothing but God dwelling within. Thakur lived in that reality. He used to say, "Tumi jano or naya jano, tumi Ram." Whether you know it or not, you're God. I see Rama in all men, I see Sita in all women. He lived in that reality, and everything physical he saw as Chinmaya, the embodiment of consciousness itself. So the devotee has this, the devotee Vijnani, sees everything in terms of the Divine Mother, and sees everything as a manifestation of... So then it's real. How can it not be real if this is the manifestation of the Divine Mother herself? Even our Swami Turiyananda, such a great jnani, at the end of his life he said, Brahma Satya, Jagat Satya. Brahman is real, this world is real, because there's nothing but Brahman itself or the manifestation of Brahman. Now the jnani, who transcends Maya, may have a little different attitude, see everything is kind of dreamlike. And I'll stop, running a little late, but I want to read a portion of a beautiful letter that Swamiji writes. Swamiji, when he really reaches that point, Swamiji was caught in the net of Maya because it was Thakur's trick. Not caught in the net, but anyhow, the part of the play that because of that he had to work hard and everything, but then a time came where he really wanted to cast it off. So he wrote this beautiful letter to Josephine MacLeod, and I'll finish with this. I'm drifting again with the bright, warm sun ahead and masses of vegetation around. And in the heat, everything is so still, so calm, and I'm drifting languidly in the warm heart of the river. I dare not make a splash with my hands or feet for fear of breaking the wonderful stillness that makes you feel sure it is an illusion. Oh, it is so calm. My thoughts seem to come from a great, great distance in the interior of my own heart. They seem like faint, distant whispers, and peace is upon everything. Sweet, sweet peace, like that one feels for a few moments just before falling into sleep, when things are seen and felt like shadows. Without fear, without love, without emotion. Peace that one feels alone, surrounded with statues and pictures. The world is, but not beautiful or ugly, but sensations without exciting any emotions. Oh, the blessedness of it. Everything is good. Om, that existence. Everything is good and beautiful, for things are all losing their relative proportions to me, my body among the first. So there's that beautiful letter that Swamiji wrote to Josephine MacLeod. So transcending this Maya will bring this ultimate peace to us. It may manifest in different ways according to our nature, but we're all trying to do that. We don't have to understand it. We have to know that it's functioning in terms of attachment, in terms of looking for pleasure and enjoyment and satisfaction in the wrong places. And there is a way to go beyond it, and we take refuge in the Divine Mother. We utilize this ego, servant ego, child ego, and that way we can transcend it. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Swamiji, thank you for a beautiful lecture. I loved your framing of truth and fact. My name is Jyoti. And I think the question I have is really to do with your own journey in coming to this knowledge and this framing from Thakur and from Sri Ramakrishna. What was your understanding of the creation of the world before you came to this order?
I didn't think about it too much, of course, when I was young. But then when I was always interested in these types of questions, but I never saw them as anything that would have one definite answer. That was clear to me. When traditional religion would simply say God created the world, then I would question things like that. What does that mean? How did he do it? Is it actual physical things and this and that? So it was kind of clear to me that religion wouldn't answer these questions, conventional religion, and that philosophy also wasn't very successful with these things. But it didn't really bother me that much. I kind of accepted. I mean, really think about it. Who thinks that we should be able to understand about the creation of the universe? I mean, who are we? Tiny, Thakur says, "You little worms crawling on the ground." We should understand things like that. So it didn't really bother me that much. Now it doesn't bother me at all. And actually, it's a great relief. It's a great relief to know that not every question has an answer, and that it's not important. We don't want to understand Maya, we want to transcend Maya. So anyhow, that's why all of my philosophy taught me the great limitation of philosophy, and how we shouldn't rely on this human mind so much. We have to rely on the heart and really go beyond all these things.
Thank you.
Swami, thank you. My name is Paritosh. Thakur said one place, I remember, he said, if you recognize Maya, it flies away.
Yes.
What did he mean by that?
Okay. We can tell. I like to understand this in terms of this ego. That, and this is when he says that when we try to analyze what is the real nature of the self, we try to find the ego. You know, when he gives the example of peeling the onion, that he starts out with his question, we want to discover what is this ego. So we peel away all of the, this outer layer is this physical, Anamaya kosha. The physical, we peel everything away, and then we get inside, we find that there's nothing there. So then we realize the unreality of the ego. But next moment, he said, it comes back. It's like we've cut off the ashwata tree. Right. Next moment, new sprouts begin to come. So we have different examples. In the existentialist tradition, there's Sartre, who's a great French existentialist. He writes about these things. He says this ego, it's like the thief who he has a big heist. He goes and he has a big haul of things, and he goes to the tavern, and he starts bragging to everybody. What I did, what a great haul I got today, how many things that I stole today and everything. And then they say, constable is coming. Police are coming in. So he runs away into the back. As soon as they leave, he comes again. So, or Ramana Maharshi has a very nice thing. He says this ego is like the uninvited guest at a wedding. Yeah, this wedding is there, and somebody is there, and he's eating too much, he's drinking too much, he's very loud, he's very obnoxious, stuffing things in his pocket and everything. And the bride's family is thinking, must have been invited by the groom's family. They're thinking the same thing. They look at each other, and as soon as they say, I didn't do it, then that person runs away. He knows he's been caught. So then this Maya will run away once recognized, but comes back. This is a problem. It'll come back until we've really transcended it. So this is why Thakur says that it's important when we recognize that this ignorance, this false identification, the unreality of the ego, that it'll disappear. That ego will disappear. But the sense of I comes back, only it'll be transformed. This is why he talks about not getting rid of the ego, but transformation from green to ripe. He talks about the kancha ami and paka ami, this unripe ego and the ripe ego. But it'll disappear, this false identification. When we have that highest realization, that'll disappear. But still some sense of I will be there afterwards when we come back. Only it won't be harmful and it won't bind us. So we have so many examples. Thakur says if you take a string that's lying on the ground and it has different curves and everything to it, and you light it on fire and it turns into ash. He says that ash will take the same shape that the string took before. It has the appearance of the ego, but you can't tie anything with it. It loses its power to bind that way. So Maya as ignorance will disappear, but as long as we're alive and live in this world, we're within that realm of Maya. That means we're within the realm of this relative universe. Unless we're in samadhi or something, we come back, we're in the domain of Maya, which doesn't have to be so much ignorance. We can just take it as this world of time, space, and causation, and this sense of individuality that doesn't leave. That doesn't leave. This is why Sri Ramakrishna says even the divine incarnation has this human aspect, that they react like human beings also. They have this human mind and everything. So that when we recognize this ignorance, that will flee. But we come back and we're still in this human realm, this human condition and everything. So, but the transformation takes place. So that way, that type of Maya, once we've recognized it, then that'll be gone from us, we hope. In the back. Yeah.
Hi, Swamiji. So my question is, my name is Atharva. Thank you for the session. It was quite enlightening. My question is slightly long. I hope that's okay. So essentially what we have, or what we sort of understand is that every individual has a Jivatma and there's a Paramatma. But the way we understand it is through our senses. And everything we perceive through our senses is simply interpreted by our mind. So what if it is actually like Paramatma sort of imagining or dreaming things, and there is no Jivatma and anything, or let's say, how do I know, in a dream, when I am sort of dreaming things, I do see people with backstories or their feelings, etc., etc. But how do I know that someone in front of me, when I'm in the waking state, has those feelings, or is actually someone who possesses Jivatma, and is not something that is simply a manifestation of my mind?
Okay. This is one of the great dangers of this idea, swapnavat. This world is like a dream. Thakur says over and over again. He doesn't say it's false. He says, I don't like to call this world unreal like a dream. We go over and over again. We shouldn't take this literally. If we take it literally, then I don't expect you to have any consciousness at all. If it's a dream, I wake up from a dream and I go to you and I say, well, you remember I gave that lecture yesterday? They say, well, are you crazy? That was your dream. That wasn't my dream, it was your dream. We don't take it literally that way. If we take it literally at all, then it's God's dream and we're all part of it. But better to just, this is why Thakur said, Aditya, better to say that there's a dreamlike quality to this world. It'll come to an end. Suppose it comes to an end, we find ourselves in some other loka, looking back, won't it feel like a long dream? But that doesn't mean that there's not some objective reality to it. Swami Nikhilananda, he used this term, objective idealism instead of subjective idealism. That means it's projected, we can say out of consciousness itself, but it has some independent objective reality. So we can assume, if we don't, we'll go crazy. We'll assume that everybody else is also a living, thinking being with awareness within that. Otherwise, there's another philosophical fallacy called solipsism. If we have any philosophical position that will lead to the conclusion that I alone exist, it's considered a fallacy. Yeah. So we don't think like that. Now, with regard to the first part, according to the non-dualists, it's not that we have a Paramatman and Jivatman. The Jivatman is the Paramatman, falsely identified with all of these coverings. They're one and the same. Or we can say the higher mind and lower mind, but it really all belongs to one and the same reality. So whatever it is, we can assume everybody else has that same, whether we say that there's only the Atman within, or whether we say the Jivatman, we assume that what applies to me applies to you. This is one of the great teachings of Gita, that when we deal with people, we have to assume they have the same feelings, and what I feel is something helpful for me, I assume that I should treat you in the same way, knowing that you have things that are helpful for you. So the most basic assumption. Otherwise, we're fit for the insane asylum. If we start questioning the existence of other people, then we know that we've taken this too far, and falsely understood this idea of a dream. We've taken it too literally. In a dream, I can think, that really nobody else exists. We see buildings in a dream. It's just like on a movie set. We assume we see a building that has to have a back to it, it has to have a concrete floor, it has to have all of these things. If it's a Hollywood set, it doesn't have to have any of that. We can walk around behind it and just see that it's cardboard. But we have to go under the assumption that this world is not like that. It's not take that idea of a dream literally, but it has a dream-like quality to it. There's no question about that. I sometimes feel that dreams can have a more realistic feeling than this waking state. And that sometimes we have a nightmare or something like that, that it'll seem so real at the time. And I have a conviction about myself, I don't know if it's true or not, that my earliest memory, childhood memory, was a dream. That I had a nightmare when I was very little, trying to climb up this hill of sand and falling back and everything, and woke up crying. I have a real feeling that that took place in the house that we used to live in. I don't remember anything from that house, that it was later. So dreams can seem very, very real, and this waking state can seem very, very unreal. Sometimes something happens, we have a car accident or something, we stop and think, no, this couldn't have happened. We lock our car, the keys in the car, and it's running. We say, no, I couldn't have done it. It has to be a dream. So this is just our way of looking at things. It shouldn't be taken literally. That how do I know that anybody else really exists? If it's just a dream, that means we're taking it too literally, this idea.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, namaste, Swamiji. My name is Ninad. So you told us example of seeing Sita and Ram in everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So can we fake it until we make it?
We fake it till we make it. Yes. Yes.
And how that transformation will happen? When will I know that I'm not anymore faking it?
That we'll feel within. We'll feel within. But yes, this is a type of sadhana where we try to do it. I remember one of the teachings of Swami Ashokanandaji, who was head of our San Francisco Center for Life. Somebody asked him, how do we see God in others? And he said, by seeing God in others. What does that mean? That we have to keep reminding ourselves that if I feel that this consciousness, this awareness is within me, I have to keep telling myself it's within you also. And if I feel that there's a divine source to it. See, if we take this example of the reflected sun in the container of water, and if I understand that that reflected sun, there has to be a real sun, and that the appearance of the sun on the water didn't grow out of the water, there has to be some divine source for this, which is also illuminating your mind and everything. Just to that understanding, reminding myself, this is what we do. This is today's imagination is tomorrow's realization. As Swami Turiyananda used to say that. Yeah. So this is one type of sadhana that we try to impress upon the mind. Swamiji liked this idea. When we read the different quotations, sayings of Swamiji, we'll see very often he said, tell yourselves over and over and over again. Keep reminding yourself that I am unborn, I am free, I am perfect, and everything like that. But also the same thing with everyone else, that we're coming face to face with God. And we should try to act upon it. Now, different ways of doing it. In the Christian tradition, there's a very nice idea They try to feel that if they're doing any service, it's to Christ himself. There's Mother Teresa. That that everyone they served was a living Christ somehow. They didn't have perhaps that same philosophical idea and everything. It's more an attitude. But we try to impress the truth of it. First we accept it as true, and then impress the truth of it and act according to it. And show, what does it mean? It means that we have to show love and respect to everyone, and we have to feel oneness with everyone, and we have to look beyond the superficial, external differences we have with other people. Then we can say that we're doing it. It's not simply that, oh, God dwells within you, now get lost. Then we feel it's a great privilege and blessing to serve God dwelling within others. We have to take it to that extent also.
Yeah. Almost.
So we fake it till we make it. Good. Om sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pasyantu, ma kashti dukha bhag bhave. Om shanti shanti shanti, hari om tatsat. May all beings be happy. May all be free from disease. May all realize the highest good. May none suffer from misery. And peace, peace, peace be unto all. I thank everyone. I thank Swamiji and Diane and everyone for inviting me here. And I hope to come back again sometime.
And thank you. We thank you. 1,000 thanks, Swamiji. And please do come back very soon.
Thank you.
We always love having you here. You know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.